I'd like to share a few of mine, and mine are quite different. I think with every parental relationship, firstly, my dad was a mentor, and hopefully he made a contribution to each of you in very different ways too, that helped develop and support your character development. But a couple things I didn't know about Dad is he was a very ardent reader about Abraham Lincoln. He really believed in many of his beliefs and writings. I didn't know that till I was older and actually learned to read myself. No, I'm just kidding. A couple areas that is to bring up hopefully a little brevity to this is that his dad in his final days, he asked me, he said, make sure you have a bit of fun, Doug, here today. I said, okay, we'll try. So we realized we had no humor. We had to ask for Barry McDonald to come in later. Which is actually partly true. But one thing I must tell you, this is a true story. I'm going to share a few humorous quips, at least from my perspective, with Dad. Dad, in his literal final days, Dad had a tremendous challenge breathing at the end with real severe respiratory problems. So his daily function was, in fact, to breathe. However, to keep life in context, I said, Dad, how are you doing? This is only a few days before he passed. He turned to me with a twinkle in his eye and he said, you know what, it could be worse. Well, it could be worse. Like, what's worse? He said, Doug, I could be doing what you do at TransLink. so life should always be kept in context. Another example of Dad's humor and keeping life in balance in context, even when things aren't going in your favor. Dad and Mom were out for a drive a number of years ago, and Dad did something illegally in his car, and for those who know Dad really well, I only heard my dad swear once in his whole life. Unfortunately, that tribute hasn't stopped in the next generation. We're still working on some of this ourselves. But as Dad went through an intersection, I think it was a U-turn, when he didn't realize, Mom was in the passenger side of the front seat of the car, was that there was a police car sitting right across the intersection. So Dad did the U-turn right in the middle of a red light. Yes, it was in typical Kelsey Proud tradition. And the lights went on. So the police car shows up, and the officer rolls out, and strolls up to the car, knocks on the window. Dad does rolls the window down, and the officer goes, "Sir, would you like a ticket or would you like a lecture?" Well, my dad thought about this for about 2 seconds and said, "You better give me the ticket. My wife just gave me the lecture." And so for those who know Dad, you could probably see that actually truthfully happening. Another example of Dad, this is another car example. Many years ago, we were kind of a family of 5, Mom and Dad. We were coming back, I believe, to Seattle. I'm in control of the microphone, so I can say whatever I want. So maybe from Seattle or New York, I don't know. But Seattle. And so we had a station wagon, a big, ugly Ford Torino back then, right? And it was before seatbelts. And there was our sister, and there was our sister sitting in the back. And we were driving out of Seattle, Mom and Dad in the front, heading home after a nice little getaway, whatever we were doing. And this individual was racing madly to try and cut my dad off. And he was very, very angry. And Dad just kept asking him to move over. Just move over to the whatever lane. And so, after this all passed, the guy tore off in his muscle car off at the next exit. About a mile down the road, Dad just burst out and started laughing. And again, you know my dad, fairly proper individual, just started laughing. "Hey Dad, what's that all about?" He says, well, he finally realized what he was doing. As he was telling the individual to move over, he was doing it in the nicest, friendly way. As you know, Dad would be very proper and smiling, except for he's doing this. Just move over. Just move over. So he's flipping the bird to the guy. So anyhow, we go home, and so that's kind of our family. Just innocent, but not really sometimes the impact we might have on others. And the final short example I have is actually involves Lars. Lars, give a wave in the back of the room. And I told Lars I was going to share this today. I think you're okay, Lars. So, Howard, Lars, and I were playing basketball many years ago out in Surrey. We were it's on King George. There's a white spot out there. we just finished playing a game, and so here were, a couple 6'3" folks and a 6'10" guy crossing the intersection. And we knew my mom and dad were supposed to be coming out to the game, right, to watch us play. And so we had a not bad little team, right? And so anyhow, if anyone has ever heard of Monty Python, okay, so you're aging yourselves. Okay. So what happened in Monty Python is we decided that we were going to have a little bit of fun going across the intersection. So we had nothing going on. Our frontal brain part hadn't grown yet in our lives, and so we said, okay, so what we did is, if you remember the horses? The coconuts from the horses? From there, do you remember that? Well, that's what we decided to do across the intersection of the King George Highway. So there we were. I think it was, I can't remember who was in front, but here we were going across. We're just doing this from like classic Monty Python style. And wouldn't you know it, the first car sitting there was Mom and Dad. With the lights going. And so they're just sitting here like this. And they watch the three of us go by. And they couldn't believe what utter failures they had raised. And yet here we are today. So I think in everything, in the cycle of life, there is humor. And that's what we want to share with you today, because Dad had a wonderful touch of humor behind the scenes. He kept things in context. He had a tremendous passion, as we've said, for the education side of things, for his family, for his religion. But yes, lurking underneath was the cheekiness that sometimes Canadians love to have fun with themselves and their family members. So, what I'd like to do now is actually I'd like to call up a dear friend of our family.